There is something that we do roughly 22,000 times a day, for the most part unconsciously, that thousands of years ago was used for healing, spiritual enlightenment, and inner peace. Practices such as ancient India's pranayama, the ancient Chinese qigong, and the Egyptians' practice of heka. That is breathing, something most of us take for granted and do not utilize to its full potential. Breathwork today has helped transform people's lives, including my own. Many of you may not know that I did a type of body work for 18 years called Rolfing. Part of my training involved a type of breath work. And as much as I loved, and I still love, the hands-on experience of body work, both giving and receiving it, it was always the breath work that I had the biggest emotional breakthroughs with. Like, so we're talking bawling, hyperventilating, crying in a puddle of tears. I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me in breath work of many different forms. We don't realize the power that our breath holds in helping us transform and heal. My guest today is a dear friend of mine who I am so happy that you will now get to know a little bit. And she, in my eyes, is one of the most powerful breathwork practitioners, as is her husband. Trained and certified as a breathwork practitioner, Kyla Erlandson has been counseling and empowering women in their lives for over 15 years. An intuitive guide and healer, she brings women back to themselves by invoking deep curiosity and discernment into the heart, and uses a spectrum of healing modalities, including somatic breathwork, meditation, emotional intelligence, and energetics. She teaches practical tools to her clients that her clients can use to ground into their daily lives for more peace and happiness. She believes the greatest gift we can offer ourselves is to be operating in the full expression of ourselves, in our full potential, and we do this by healing. So welcome, my friend Kyla.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so excited to be here. Oh, that intro just got me so excited.
Yeah.
Like,
You gave me shivers as I'm reading it.
Do this.
So everyone, Kyla, okay, how do we even know each other? Just through Janine?
I think so.
Okay, so through my little sister Janine, who is Kyla's neighbor for many, many years now. I guess that's how we met. Yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
But we've
And
been
now we're
good
like
friends now
family.
for years.
Mhm.
My sister has
Yeah.
a cabin out at your cabin, which almost burned down this summer. We were just talking about that and almost started crying. Anyways, it's still standing. Thank goodness. We had a lot of fires in this area over the summer, but I have known about you and Corey and your breath work though for many, many years. You guys actually certify other teachers to become breathwork practitioners. So you guys are really high up there in this world of breathwork. Your husband was the one that started first, many years, like when he was in his early 20s, which is always so surprising to me.
Totally.
Right? Like most people in their early 20s, I mean, back then, I was drunk every day, probably high. Like I was not doing a lot of breath work. Let's just put it that way.
No. We met at a bar at Christmas time, and he was sober. He was in his training, and I was like 19, he was 22, or no, maybe I was then 20. Anyways, we were young, and so that bar is torn down now. It was the Bloom, the Max, so the college bar. So people are always like, we live this like conscious life, and people always ask, how did you guys meet? I'm like, well, we met at like the oldest bar in town. Bucket beer nights. That's where we met.
And I want you to share your story, because being as young as you were and coming into a relationship, like you guys, I can't even believe you guys made it this long, to be honest. Like, because you guys have been together for so long, and you have done so much transformation, both of you, since then. Like, you've worked on yourselves, you've become different people, because who you came into that relationship is not the person you are today by far, I would say, because you've told me about where you were at as a person back then. So just share with the audience how you got into this and that
Well,
story.
yeah, so through Corey,
Mhm.
and he was in his first level of training. So there's 4 levels that we have. We have the first level, which is a personal self-actualization training. The second level is the practitioner training, where you become certified. The third level is the teacher's assistant training. Fourth level is you become a certified teacher. So he was in his first level, and being a young 23-year-old, he didn't have much explanation for what it was that he was doing. And mind you, this is also 20 years ago, where this world of just bringing more to your life, more consciousness, more awareness, healing was a woo woo. It was considered
Mhm.
like woo woo, like, what are you doing? At that time, it's still hard for people to ask for help, but especially 20 years ago, it was like, well, what's wrong with you then? Is something
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah.
And it just wasn't the case for me. I came to a point in our relationship very early on where I had this really painful feeling within that I couldn't pinpoint. I didn't have any education around emotional intelligence, or spiritual intelligence, and there was something missing. And I remember feeling like this deep, just gutted, empty feeling in the core of me. And I kept being curious with myself and asking myself, why am I feeling this way? Why is this so painful? What is this? And I soon came to realize it was this codependence that I had, and it showed up in my relationship.
Mhm.
And it was a powerlessness feeling. And I didn't know how to navigate it. I felt really alone and I felt really afraid.
Mhm.
And I started out by jumping into my own one-on-one individual sessions with a practitioner.
Kyla,
And
how, sorry to
mhm,
interrupt. Just can you give us an example of what that codependency looked like in your relationship?
it looked like need. It looked
Mhm.
like a good question, Karen. Blame.
Mm.
Okay. Um, waiting around for that person to make
Mhm.
me happy, do things
Mhm.
to make me happy. Uh, really unhealthy behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's
I
so
didn't
many
like the
women that can
person I
relate.
was.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was it was gross, and it pushes that person away.
Yep. Yeah. I went
And
through
then
it for so many years. I had such
yeah, and
bad
then you go,
codependency on
yeah,
men.
right.
Oh,
And then you go into your own attachment, so they become
yeah.
the avoidant, and you go into your anxiety attachment, and it's like a dog chasing the tail, but you're chasing the relationship, and they're like avoiding.
They're like, okay, crazy
Right.
woman.
And then God, like the messaging that we grew up with, we're such a consumer society, and all the conditioning, and we are not set up for success in relationships.
No, I agree.
And as women in relationships, we've been really oppressed, suppressed, repressed.
Mhm.
We've been really squashed. And I think when it comes back to us wanting to connect with our own truth, I know from my experience, I've tended to question myself, gaslight myself, not validate my feelings because, oh, am I being too this, too that? Um, and we've been given that message. We've been given that programming and that conditioning. And that is one of my just like core passionate things to bring to women within themselves and in their relationships is to start validating themselves, to
Yeah.
start standing in their truth, to start knowing that you don't have to defend yourself, that you can stand power in your truth. And a lot of healing will occur in the relationship from that. So we work on a lot of relationship dynamics these days. That is really what's coming through, is people needing support in their relationship and they don't know what to do. They
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. They don't know any of the trauma that they're coming in with. They don't realize their own protection. They don't realize their own attachment styles. And that is super helpful.
Mhm.
They also don't know how to do self-care. Like,
No.
that self-care really gets thrown out, and it kind of is like, ugh,
Yes.
like that
Yeah.
kind of makes
Yep.
you be like
Falls on
cringy,
deaf ears and you're like,
right?
"Oh, yeah,
Oh, nice
self-care."
self-care. I'm talking about like the daily practices and the rituals to engage in. And the biggest gift that occurs within that is the currency of time. And so the exchange that we give ourselves, as a woman, as much as I do, I'm sure, how hard it can be to give ourselves time, whether it's time to make an appointment, time to do this, time to do that. It's the time
Yeah.
that can be so difficult. So
Yeah.
I know from my experience, it's the time that I offer myself, no matter what I'm doing, that builds my self esteem. That
Ah,
reminds me, it's a demonstration of my value, of my self worth.
wow.
And that in turn turns into building our self value and our self worth. It reminds us how important we are, that we do matter.
I
And that
never thought
turns so
about it
much
like
into
that,
self love.
Kyla.
Currency of time. It's our biggest
Wow.
currency.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to that because
Mhm.
that's very I needed to hear that. So I'm not surprised that we're having this conversation today, but let's rewind. And I mean, did Corey back then, was there a time because you were this kind of codependent
Mhm.
19-year-old
Yeah,
and he's
so
doing this
young.
transformation in his own journey and his own breath work.
Right.
Was there a time where he almost left you, where it was like, oh, forget this girl? Like,
Right?
I'm just thinking back to
Yeah.
like when I was like that, and I was like
Mhm.
that for probably a decade or
Mhm.
more of my life, where I had that like neediness and really messed up when it came to relationship dynamics. Uh, and a lot of the time, of course, the men would leave. It would be like, oh yeah, whoa, oh, red flag, red flag. Don't want to have anything to do with this girl.
He totally left me.
Did
Yeah, for
okay,
sure.
I
Yeah,
didn't
he
know that.
did. I shouldn't say he left me. We had a
Ah,
conscious breakup.
okay.
So okay, to rewind that a little bit, when we first started dating, we dated for a few months and I was like, gosh, I'm just not really feeling it with this guy. And I kept trying to convince myself, I'm like, he was so kind. He was true to his word. I didn't ever have to wonder. Um, he
He was
was,
a
oh
good
my
guy.
gosh, so good looking,
Yeah.
so handsome, fit, doing all this personal work, like had a really good job, he was a stable person. Like I was like, what is wrong with me? And there wasn't that chase. So there
Yeah.
wasn't that like trauma response instinct to chase. It didn't fire like that internal part that kept us wondering and wanting. He was what anyone would want.
Right.
Anyway, so I would convince myself, and then eventually after a few months, I didn't stick around for a few months and ponder. It was just like I remember he wanted to take me out for Valentine's dinner, and I was like, "Oh, cannot let this guy take me out for dinner and spend money on me when I'm not feeling like this. It doesn't feel right." So we ended things. I just said I wanted to be friends, and in the meantime, from February until that October, I had kept thinking about him, and I was like, "Well, this is interesting. I keep thinking about him," and so we ended up reconnecting. Like I think over Thanksgiving time, and so that was when my codependence really like kicked in. Was we started this relationship again, and I started being really into him. And after I dove into my first few sessions while we were dating, I ended up
Of breath
uh,
work.
yeah, of
Yeah.
breath work. I ended up signing up for the 6-month intensive self-actualization training. And he was enrolled at the same time doing his certification to become a breathwork practitioner. So we were in this training parallel, and everything got really heightened for me. And, you know, as you do work like this to become more conscious, everything unlike love starts to show itself to be healed. And that's what occurred for me, was my unhealed parts, all in like love, started to show itself. And so he did end up ending things with me. And we were still in this training together. There was still like another month. So we would see each other. And I really anchored into it was the most the biggest gift I could have ever been given was that breakup and facing my own pain and facing my own self and having to really look at building the relationship with myself and really go into the practice of that and really anchor into me and stop looking outside of myself. And that was the whole reason I went into this training in the first place, was because of the pain I felt of that. So we did end up getting back together once and for all. And we have definitely gone through 2 decades of leveling up, evolving. We've had 2 kids, career changes, we've moved, we've had a lot go on. I've spent half of my life with him, the most evolving part of my life with him. Consciously. And I feel like we're going through another up level within our relationship again. I actually feel like maybe you can relate to this, Karen, but this actual timeline that we're in, this specific time today, like September 12th, 2023, there is a lot of burning down. And I mean that literally and non-literally.
Right.
There is a lot of things burning down for rebuilding. I'm experiencing a lot of unveiling that I thought I had done, and there's more coming forth. And all
do you think it's our
is,
age, Kyla?
I think it's age. I think it's Mercury's
just the
in
where
retrograde.
Oh, is
I
it?
feel,
Okay, yeah. And just the universe, there's collectively things are
Earth
shifting.
is shifting. There is a lot going on in the energetic world and in the physical world. And if you want things to change right now, you can have that. You can really look at your patterns. You can really look at your beliefs. You can do that at any time. But I really feel the world's burning down. This is a demonstration. This is symbolism of old paradigms, old ways literally burning to the ground, the earth wanting to be renewed. She might be really pissed off. And this fire is asking for renewal. It's asking for things to be different. And I think that's also what's occurring within us.
Especially for women, like differently for women than men. Men are going through their own shift right now, but so are women. And I feel like when you say that, like to me, it relates to where we are as women today, because we went through this very repressed, for thousands of years. Well, I shouldn't say thousands. I think thousands of years ago, we were actually very equal to men. And then we went through repressed, like being totally repressed for so long. And then we had the women's movement. And it's like we shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. We had to fight so hard to be seen as an equal, which we're still not, but to get ourselves up there, to be able to vote, to have choice, to all of these things, that to be able to work and be paid as much as a man, which still isn't happening either, but it's getting better, that we have become so highly stressed out that we don't see our worth, like you said, right? We don't see the value in taking care of ourselves. We see worth in how much can we do in a day. We have to be these powerful women that can do everything, that don't age, that stay slim, that, that we can bring as much money home as our husbands do, but yet we're still going to take care of all the children and clean the house and cook dinner. And it's still very ingrained. And it shocks me constantly when I talk to women in my practice who are saying that they're still doing all of these things. Not everybody. There's many men that have stepped up to the plate for sure. But I would say there's more that haven't than that have, at least in my generation.
I was just pulling up this quote I saved on my phone because it really ties into this. And it's, the author is unknown, or whoever wrote it was unknown. Our generation is so busy trying to prove that women can do everything men can do. Women are losing the unique qualities that set us apart, the God-given femininity and unique way our Creator designed us. Women weren't created to do everything a man can do. Women were created to do everything a man can't do.
Oh, see, that gives me shivers. See, I love that. I love that. And it's not saying women can't do what a man can do.
No, it's
But
not. It's
I think we have
acknowledging
to
we're
come
not
back
meant to
to,
be.
yes.
Because look at Karen, how many women come into your practice with autoimmune diseases?
Oh, so many. It's like an epidemic right now for women is autoimmune.
This is the body sending smoke signals. Pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Any
are
illness.
unaligned,
Mm-hmm.
and you have all these energetic blockages emotionally in your body.
Mm-hmm.
That is the suppression showing up in the physical self, creating dis-ease, illness.
Mm-hmm. And that dynamic, I know you work with a lot of women entrepreneurs that are also mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you talk about this before, that even for yourself, I've heard you talk about it. You and I have talked about it together, this struggle between wanting to be good moms to our kids and raise them and do all of the mom things. And yet we're business women. We love running our own business and being an entrepreneur. But those two worlds really can collide. And it's so emotionally draining, that constant battle of, am I giving my business enough? And am I giving my family enough?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. And is my bank account supporting? And
yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really a lot. Oh,
yeah.
There was something I wanted to say about that. I hope it comes back to me.
It will.
Yeah.
So tell us about breathwork.
Oh, well, let's talk like the nervous system, right?
Let's talk the nervous system.
When we're not aligned, when we're not in peace, when we have like this trauma, we all have wounds and emotional imprints from childhood growing up. Inevitably, we all do. They get held or stored in our body or our soma. And so we've all experienced pain, like fear, anxiety, uncertainty, worry, grief, sorrow that can be part of daily life. And the breath assists these and moving these emotions through. They get stuck in our body. So they remove the blocks and the barriers to love. That's essentially what's happening, is we've created this protection around us physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah.
There's my real life occurring. So I'll come sit down, Fergie. There's my. So the breath helps us move these through. We have energy points in our body that I guide you through opening up, which are the chakras, and we end up processing these emotions, our blocks and barriers to love, layer by layer. And so unless we do this, these experiences and emotions will continue to layer onto our four main dimensions, which is our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self, perpetuating that separateness that we can feel, isolation, alone, imposter syndrome, not enough, whatever your story is that you're coming in with. And that's what's preventing us from living in our peaceful content and abundance, is storing those in our body, but also the mental part that perpetuates it, and the subconscious part of our brain that's holding that, because we are only operating from about 4% of our consciousness, and the rest is 96 of our subconscious family patterns, generational, ancestral, bloodline, societal conditioning, environment, there's all of that is in our subconscious. That's a lot. So what happens when you do conscious connected breathing, which is that very specific method that helps integrate somatically?
What does that mean, though?
A second.
Yeah.
Somatic is the body integration. So the CO2, the breathing that we do drastically reduces the CO2 to the blood. This reduces the blood flow to the amygdala. The amygdala is the part of our brain that is the fight, flight, or freeze response. So as a result, reducing the blood flow to the amygdala the fight flight response in your brain is temporarily quieted.
Mm.
As the breathing continues, different parts of the brain get activated, allowing for the reinterpretation of situations, often with a more loving and compassionate perspective. So you quiet down that nervous system of the fight or flight, the protection, and you allow for other things in your brain to start interpreting differently. New belief system, new ways of being, more compassion. Now, the somatic level, this is the integration of the breath that is so beautiful, so important, because you can read all the books, you can go to a counseling session, but are you integrating that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, usually not.
I've done some other work outside of breathwork sessions, and I left feeling incomplete.
Yeah. Same. Always.
And yeah, I walked out the door and been like, this just something does not feel complete. There was words, but there's no integration.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with my counseling sessions, they are 90 minutes to 2 hours long, because in the first part, we have dialogue. We go through belief systems. You see me for a set of 12 sessions consistently bi-weekly to integrate it into your daily life. Okay, let me go back to the somatic level. So this allows deep connection to your truth. And the blocks and barriers that we create for protection prevent us from hearing that truth. And that's why we can question ourselves or not feel validated or have all those doubts, lack of clarity. So through the release of the stored energy and emotions, the potential to create your new belief system occurs at a cellular level. So the frequency of breath that you're shifting in your body through the breath allows for a new belief system to be created at a cellular level through the different frequency, which alters their vibration and allows for a new experience within yourself.
Yes. And I'm going to just give a little example so that people can because
That was a lot of words.
That's a lot of words. And so people are going, okay, what does she mean? What does that mean? Because some people are so new to this. They've never heard that, hey, you can even just do all of this emotional work, trauma work through just breath alone and dialogue, right? Yeah. Personally, my personal journey was same as you. As I got to a point where I got to my rock bottom and knew that I had to change something within myself, or I was going to keep repeating patterns. I broke up with who's now my husband. And
love your story.
Yeah, it's a great story. I'm not going to go into it right now, but I was, just put it this way. I was on the kitchen floor, bawling my eyes out because I had to leave him. I had a 1-year-old daughter. I was just at the lowest of lows in my life. And I knew that if I didn't change right then and there, that my daughter was going to follow suit, that she would go through a lot of the same traumas that I had to go through. And she would, have a lot of the struggles. And I knew I had to change myself in order to bring in love, real love. And so I went to traditional therapy. It was great. There's nothing wrong with traditional therapy. It was really good to actually talk to somebody and not feel like you were burdening them with your words and your whining and complaining, because that's how I always thought of it, right? I was the person that I'll take your whining and I'll help you. But I had a very hard time being the person that came in, and I shouldn't use the word whining, but you know what I mean? Like, oh,
that's another just an example here of the gaslighting. Oh, I'm whining. I should be grateful, or I should this or that.
Yes, I should be the whining woman,
Yeah.
But traditional therapy, I probably a good year I went to it consistently, and it did help. But I always left feeling like there was a piece missing. Like I just needed something more. Like I wasn't changing. I was talking about these things, which was helpful, and to get feedback on things in a different perspective. Yeah. But I didn't feel like the inside was changing.
Wasn't getting to the root of your physical body, of these.
And when you say cellular level, that is what was missing. I know that now, but then I couldn't have put that into words. But there was no change on a cellular level. And that may sound really woo-woo to some people, but I'm telling you guys, I started to work with a woman who was an energy healer. We did lots of breath work. We did many, many different modalities of healing. I saw her for many years. And it wasn't till I started to do that work that I felt a shift on a whole different level, which was a cellular level. I changed from the deepest of my core. I changed, but I had to get rid of these locked emotions. I mean, I remember her saying to me, you are cut off from your waist down. I had had sexual abuse, like I had been raped and I had never dealt with it. And, she's like, you just have no energy down there. And so we had to work on me breathing into my pelvis and bringing life down there. And when you do that, you do release these emotions that you have stored, because if you don't deal with an emotion when it's happening, which how much we still do it to this day, everybody does it, fear, anger, sadness, we repress. And if we don't release those emotions, it has what happens chemically in the body when you're experiencing that has to go somewhere. And so it is stored typically in these energy centers. That is not woo-woo. This is a proven fact that we have energy centers in the body, which Kyla said, it's chakras. And so we have 7, is that right? 7 chakras, energy centers in the body that we can have different ones being closed off. I remember the first time I breathed into my heart chakra, I literally felt like the floodgates opened. I felt like water was pouring out of my heart. It was just this flood of emotions. And I just bawled and bawled and bawled because I had put up an energetic wall around my heart that nobody was getting through. So when that came down through breath work, huge emotional release. So I hope that can help people to get an understanding of what we're talking about and how it can be, how powerful it can be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really tender. Like, I'm really holding that tenderly for you. That's really vulnerable. Thank you.
And what do you see, Kyla? Like, you work specifically with women. And I wanted to ask you this, which is, do you see a lot of the same stuff coming up in your work? Like, do women tend to have a lot of the same, like, either be sexual trauma? Is it that self-worth, body image? Is there a typical pattern that not everybody's different, but I'm just thinking, like, is there something that usually you see come up a lot?
Sacrifice.
Oh, explain.
Is huge. And that all comes down to our self-worth and not honoring ourselves, abandoning ourselves, even the questioning of our own feelings. Oh, am I to this? Am I to that? I don't want to be whiny. I don't want to be that. The sacrifice in our relationships and where we don't stand in our truth and we don't speak up for fear of attack, or you don't want to be that naggy wife, and really starting to stand in the truth, because that becomes a sacrifice to our own selves, or we start to blame or become martyrs, start to become the victim, and that is on us. And there was such a long time where I pointed the finger at my husband.
Oh yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
When there's that old saying, when you have one finger pointing out, there's 3 pointing back at you.
Ooh, yeah.
And it took me a long time to understand this.
Me too.
It really took me a long time. And this is the disservice of patriarch in silencing us, and the conditioning of those beliefs and the programming of those beliefs, that if we start to speak up, I mean, we've heard it all before. You speak up and you're called a bitch. A man speaks up and he's protecting. She's a crazy one. Oh, he's the protector.
Yeah. Oh, she must be PMSing.
Oh, I can't stand that. We've been so shut down in our anger too. We've been not taught how to use our anger appropriately. And I think it's so important for women to feel their rage. Do
Yes.
it
Oh,
appropriately.
I have a very big problem
Feel your rage.
with my rage. Yeah. Like I don't show anger very well at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I just did a liver cleanse recently. And every time I do a liver cleanse, I get so angry. Like the whole time I'm ready to blow my top. And it's such a foreign feeling to me because I don't let myself feel anger very
Mhm.
rarely. And liver is the organ that actually stores anger. And every time I do a liver cleanse, I can't even believe it feels like I've been taken over by somebody. I'm like, who is this person? Like my blood is boiling and I am ready to snap. It is the weirdest thing. And I go, okay, just feel it. Don't suppress it. Just feel it. Be angry. Like,
I have a colleague that goes and chops down trees when she's in her anger and rage.
oh, well, the poor trees, but
And it is, I think she chops wood.
okay.
I don't think she chops down the tree. She chops wood and punching bag,
Wow.
like really bearing down and feeling that anger is so important for us because of that repression. We've not
Mm.
been taught how to use our anger appropriately, and neither has our entire society. I mean, when you think about children getting sent to their rooms to when they're doing something wrong, if they're acting out or being inappropriate or shamed in the classroom to go sit in the corner or sit outside by themselves. Well, the trauma occurs in them being isolated in their emotion.
Yeah.
And it starts so early on because we have not been taught how to use anger appropriately
Yeah. Yeah. And to
at an
feel
early
it.
age. Yeah, you want to act like that, you go over there and do it, or you're gonna. I mean, we come from lots of old generations where our parents or our grandparents, like they were really beat.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
so back to the women and the question you had about the what do I see mostly, and
Mhm.
it's having boundaries.
Mhm.
It's having the awareness of where they're sacrificing. And I have some clients who are multi-millionaire entrepreneurs, and they've come into my practice because they've needed support with boundaries with family, with relationship dynamics, with building up even more trust and love for themselves.
Ugh. Oh, it's really sad. Sad,
It
but
is
good,
sad, but
good. We're getting the word out there. That's why we're doing this podcast. Is women need to realize this. They need
mhm,
to see this that we're doing this to ourselves.
yeah.
And like you pointed out so clearly that it's this reflection of self-love.
We have a
We
part
do
now. Like
this.
this is up to us to start. It sounds so cheesy, but to truly like really re-become the goddesses that we once have been. Like
Yes.
before we were burned at the stake for being healers, for being nurturers.
Yeah.
There's the woman's Holocaust. How many people know about that?
I know. Nobody.
Nobody talks about that.
Where they
That is
think
a real
anywhere
thing.
from
Millions
like
of women.
100,000 to possibly 1 million women were murdered,
Yeah.
like
Burnt at the stake,
burnt at the stake.
drowned,
Yeah. They don't actually know.
accosted, tortured.
Mhm.
And Karen, I look at you and I, and people might say those women are healers, but what I believe to be true is we're bringing the healing modality, and we are bringing women into their personal power to connect with their own healing.
Mhm. Mhm.
We're bringing that forth. We're doing the teaching and the guiding.
Yes,
You're your own
absolutely.
healer just as much as I am,
Yeah.
but I need guidance.
Yes, as do I. Yeah,
It was a long
definitely.
summer. I had 2 counseling sessions this week.
Did you?
I did. I was like, "Oh, I'm booking these in the same week. This is necessary."
I just booked myself a massage because I was like, I need to distress. I need to like calm my system down. Started doing breath work again on a daily basis, twice a day, because I definitely find that breath work is extremely powerful because it's like an instant calm to my nervous system. And there has been so much research on this. This isn't woo woo. There's been a ton of research on what happens in our brain when we're breathing deeply and in a conscious way. And there's different ways, there's different techniques of breath. Now, yours specifically is mouth breathing.
It's conscious connected breathing. So you're breathing in fully, out gently into the belly, feeling that breath hit the back of your throat, and you imagine it going in and out connected like a circle. I don't recommend that this kind of breath work is done solo, because you don't know what's being stored that could come out. You know, I've had my own experience and other clients' experience where you could be a vibrating mess emotionally. You need someone there to guide and support you. And also your practitioner, if depending who they've been trained by, is hopefully also an intuitive. I'm an intuitive, so I can hear things, I can feel and see things as to what's going on while that person's in their session. And like,
I was too.
Yeah, and you still are.
I still am. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And we all are. And so this technique and this breath work also brings people back into their intuition, into hearing that inner voice, into hearing and being connected with their higher self.
How does it help us to have more self-love?
Well, if the brain, if your body isn't constantly in protection in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and you quiet that down in breath work, then you're giving yourself a different experience. And that becomes a new reference point. And so you keep building onto that new reference point, stronger and stronger and stronger. So that becomes more of a default, and you're creating this new baseline, this new foundation. And then your bandwidth grows and your capacity grows and grows. And so when life gets thrown a curveball and you've been consistent with your practices and your love and your care for yourself and going to whatever mentor you're seeing, your ability to hold space for that curveball is a lot different. So you're able to actually consciously respond, take a breath, and have the capacity to deal with that curveball.
And differently, deal with it differently than you probably have your whole life. You know, instead of pointing that finger, which so many of us do. I mean, that was probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life, which is I am responsible. Nobody else. I can't point fingers and say, it's your fault that I'm feeling this way. It's your fault that this is happening. I am responsible. I'm responsible for how I react to something, how I'm feeling, everything. It's me. I have to turn it around to myself. And if people could get that, and they can just, and breathwork gives you that ability, I feel, to be aware of self and to go, okay, what's the bigger picture in this situation? Like if you're constantly you're attracting the wrong person into your life, man or woman, and it's like one failed relationship after the next, like I was having. Maybe it's time, instead of going, oh, all men or all women are shit and it's their fault and I just keep getting hurt and poor me and woe me. You got to start looking within, and you got to start healing yourself so that you bring in something else and you have that awareness. I think it can be that powerful. It can transform a person's life.
It is the most transformational work I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
It really brings me back to the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And back to my trust. And however, like I said, I wouldn't be able to do that without the guidance of my practitioner and her intuition and her capabilities and her love. And it's love that makes the space safe. And I feel like that's something I really offer for my clients, is they have a place to feel safe. And when we feel safe
and vulnerable,
we can open up.
Yeah, because that's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel safe, you can't get to what you need to get to.
Yeah.
In order for that person to assist you.
Yes.
So the love heals. Cheesy line again. But it does. It really does.
And we're in a world right now where we're constantly looking outside of ourselves to heal, for things to heal us
Mm-hmm.
emotionally and physically. It's like, let's, take this supplement, do this,
Yeah.
do that. We want the quick
Is this
fix.
the answer? Is that the answer?
Yes, yes,
Guess what? We're the answer.
yes. And
I
it's
have a group of
so
women
hard.
I'm really close with, and we always say to each other, we're the ones we've been waiting for.
Wow. Yeah,
We
exactly.
guess it's important to have guides to bring you back to that place.
Yep. Yes.
There's nothing outside you that's going to save you. It is you.
Yeah. Because I don't
And
think I could have had those experiences that I had doing it on my own. Like breath work, just regular practice of breath work. Like I do the 4-7-8 breath right now twice a day, which really calms my nervous system down. But the deep healing piece of breath work, I had to have a teacher. I had to have a facilitator. I couldn't let go if on my own.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you're in your own patterns, when you're just living in your own belief systems and family stuff, you're in it. And so the guide, the mentor, counselor, practitioner, whoever it is you're seeing, is able to see what's going on with you from the outside looking in.
Yes.
Because we can get really wrapped up in our own pain. It's really hard to see what actually is happening, what actually is going on. And that's the most important part, is finding that mentor that can assist you with that. And one of the most amazing benefits and qualities of breath work is you don't have to practice for months to experience change.
No.
You will notice calming effects immediately. In
Mhm.
fact, I have some clients that have such that can feel so anxious or lack of peace that sometimes in their breath session they get so pieced out they start to fall asleep.
Wow.
And if that ever happens with them, I'm like,
Just go ahead and sleep.
no, I bring them too. I'm like, I recognize if they're checking out or
Yeah.
if they're pieced out. And I'm like, oh, their body is just needing this so much. Because I also see them go through their huge cellular shifts sometimes that are really intense. There's other times where their body's like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
This is so nice to be not in protection right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know. It makes me want to just go do it right now.
Yeah. So
We
you
were,
can notice calming effects immediately, and that healing the nervous system, quieting that part of the brain down is imperative. It's imperative. You can't heal if you're constantly in protection.
no.
For lasting and transformational healing, that requires ongoing assistance. That requires, longer lasting commitment to yourself with working with someone, so that you can dive deeper into that individual and personalized self-actualization, and keep healing that with the integration of the breath every session consistently.
And the emotional intelligence, I think that that's such a powerful word that I don't know if everybody understands that one either, but I think that that's such an important piece to get in life, that we need to have that emotional intelligence. So can you explain what that means?
Well, emotion is the glue that holds us together. And I'll just give you an example. When I
Mhm.
started doing my own sessions, I had suffered from copious amounts of bladder infections. I think in 1 year I had like 12. And yes, there was some things physically going on where my internal body was out, but also on an emotional level, metaphysically, bladder infection means pissed off.
Mm.
And so my anger was being stored in my bladder. That was where my energy block was happening. And so when I started addressing my anger or what I was pissed off about, my bladder infections went away. And it's been like 20 years. And anytime I start to feel my body sending me a smoke signal, if my bladder is uncomfortable, I'm like, oh, time to pay attention. What haven't I been acknowledging? What am I feeling mad about? Okay. And then I can go into my tools of allowing my anger and what I need to do for that. And anger is actually a really powerful emotion because you can use it as your rocket fuel. You can use it to get shit done, whether that's addressing an issue, coming forth to your partner on something you've been quiet about, addressing a barrier between a friendship, like whatever it has been for you. So the emotional intelligence, without our physical bodies, we don't have emotion. This is what we're here experiencing, is the human self, is our emotional self. But I think we've become we built this relationship with so much judgment on self and self-rejection that if we're anything but happy or peaceful or grateful, then we deem ourselves unlovable, not enough, and we start to go into judgment. So when we have this awareness of fear, guilt, anger, sadness, anything other than love and joy, well, we can use those emotions to our advantage to know what's going on right now. You can always look to your body. Your body will always tell you. It is our barometer. And it will tell you, you have something funky going on with your eye. What aren't you paying attention to that you don't like seeing? You're getting ear infections. What aren't you liking to hear? What's going on for you there? And then again, my bladder infections. And again, Karen, like you talked about your sexual trauma and that lower half of your body being shut down.
And I had endometriosis. I had chronic ovarian cysts. I had candida. I don't have any of that anymore. I haven't for like 20, like at least candida. I probably haven't had it for 20 years now because I healed.
Amazing. Yeah. And that was the rejection of the feminine part of you.
Yes, 100%. The lack of that. I'm going to close that off and pretend it doesn't exist because it's too much. That's emotional intelligence, people.
And I don't have studies, and I should have pulled something up, but it is the majority of women that have autoimmune disease.
Yes, it is. A lot more women. Same with thyroid. Hypothyroidism is way more prevalent in women, and this is our voice chakra. Where your thyroid sits is your voice chakra.
It's your harmony, your truth.
What are you not speaking that you should be, that you want to be speaking?
Well, and what are you denying within yourself? I find I really notice a lot of women's throats on an energetic level, the swelling in them. And all of that emotion and energy being stored there.
Huge emotional piece there. Oh my gosh. I mean, we could go on and on this. Like, I really believe with every chronic illness, there is an emotional piece to it. It may not be 100%, but it's typically the piece that most people are missing, so they'll get better. Just, they only get to a certain point with their healing with supplements and IVs and all the amazing things, surgeries, all the things that are out there right now in our medical system, and even in the therapeutic world of naturopathic medicine and herbal supplements. And I feel like you can only get so far in that healing journey, and you have to deal with the emotional to have full healing capacity.
And it's so uncomfortable to feel our emotional.
It's really uncomfortable.
People,
it's being vulnerable. I mean, it is. It's being very vulnerable. I will share the story before we go here, but I was speaking at an event with Kyla in the spring, and she had her talk first. So my sister and I went to her talk, and there was all of us, it was a women's summit. So we're all in this big room, we're lying on the ground, and Kyla's doing her talk. And then Kyla walked us through a breath session. And my sister's next to me, and I'm not even joking, like within 30 seconds of doing the breath work, my little sister's bawling her eyes out beside me. And then I'm in my head, and I know the power of breath work. And I'm thinking to myself, I got to talk in like 2 hours. I got my speech to do. I can't be, in my puddle of tears. I can't have this huge emotional breakthrough and then go do my talk. So I was really like resisting doing what you were telling me to do. So I was like, I don't think I can do this right now. And then I remember I just told myself, Karen, don't worry about it. Just go with it. Let's experience this. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to let go. And I did. And I started to follow what Kyla was telling me to do. And it was so interesting because out of nowhere, this very, very strong message came through, which was that my relationship with my husband could be even better. And that to me was out of nowhere because I luckily have because I think I did all the work, I have a really, really good marriage. Like I've never felt like, oh, I really need to work on my marriage. I haven't. I've taken it probably for granted that it's as good as it is. Like we get along really well. We don't fight. We there's so much love between us. We have a good sex life. Like we've got it all covered and we've grown and together and all of these amazing things. But I never thought, oh, it could be even better. And that's what that breathwork session did for me that day was made me realize, oh, it could be that much better. What an incredible gift that is to
I have
realize.
goosebumps covered. I'm covered in goosebumps, Karen, for like a few reasons. And one of them is like that shift you had from your protection into surrender.
Yes.
So that surrender allowed you to have that allowance. That surrender allowed you to hear your true inner voice, and you trusted it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my sister came out. I said, well, what happened to you? She was like, I don't know. She's like, it was just this like massive like release. She said like an emotional, just the tears had to come. And so she just let it flow, which was really powerful for her. Like she really needed that.
Yeah.
So it was just in that short little stint. That's how powerful it was for us.
Oh, Karen, that's so
So
incredible.
thank you.
And I know you shared that with me before, but it still gives me goosebumps every time you do share it. And, there's one thing coming through for me right now before we do go is I think holy smokes, makes me feel sad. So it must be important is that I think we're so afraid to feel sad.
Yes.
I think we're so afraid to grieve and let go. And in that sadness, when we can move into this place and have guidance with this place, the forgiveness we can have for ourselves in what we used to believe about ourselves, the stories we've carried about ourselves, what we've carried on and what we think other people have thought about us, our own thoughts that are the opposite of what creator intended us to be, which is we're perfect. And I know that every time I'm able to move into forgiving myself for something and letting go, that brings me back to peace. That brings me back to the truth. And I know recently I've really rediscovered and unveiled a lot of things that I'm still carrying that I need to forgive myself for. A lot of things that really hold me back as a parent or as a mom, or even barriers in my relationship with my husband, and the forgiveness I need to give myself. And they're not even things that I've done wrong, but it's the belief that I have done something wrong.
Yeah.
Or the belief that I'm not enough or that I'm not lovable.
Yeah. Yeah. I got it too.
And sadness really bridges us over from sadness into love and joy. There's a bridge. We don't like change. No. It's hard for us to have change. We avoid it. We don't want to grieve. It's hard for us to accept. Us as humans, we really like to hold on, even if it doesn't serve us. Because if we don't, then something has to change. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And that might mean speaking up again for ourselves, interrupting unhealthy behaviors. It might even mean really acknowledging relationships that aren't serving, where we may have to consider a new way to look at them or even have them at all. So I just felt like that message of forgiveness was really crucial. I could keep going on to that.
I
But
know that could be a whole
there's so
other
many things
podcast about
throughout this where I
that.
was like, I was making notes to be like, okay, remember to talk about this as that came up. And
Oh,
this could
well,
be a 3-hour.
you lead by example, Kyla. Like I can't tell you how many times there was just a time, even just in the summer when I was at your cabin and you were telling me about, you were sharing a story about a dynamic that happened between you and Corey, where you stood up for yourself. And I just, I looked at you with like wonderment, like, wow, she can do that. She can speak her mind like that and be like, hey, this isn't fair. What about me? What about my prior? Why am I being left to do this as the woman? And I was so like, oh, wow, she's so strong and so like, I look up to you.
Oh,
And I just
thank
like,
you.
you taught me, you always teach me things about that. And I appreciate you. And so thank you. And I think that if anybody is being drawn to this conversation and listening to this and being drawn to Kyla, know that that's a sign that she could be that person for you. I'm a big believer in finding the right person that you connect with, because that's the person then that's going to likely help you to heal those things inside of you. And I bring on a lot of different types of practitioners for that purpose, so that people can hear from all sorts and go, ooh, that person, that's the one I connect with what she's saying, or even just their energy. Like, I have no idea what this woman's talking about, but I really like her, so I'm going to work with her.
Totally. Like really what I want to do is I want to bring you into seeing how you can create what it is you want in your life.
Right.
I want to bring you to your abundance level of being able to receive love. I want you to bring you into the things that you want to receive internally and externally. And to do that, we have to remove the blocks and barriers. We have to do some digging, we have to do some excavating, and we need to do some practicing together to build these new muscles.
Yes. So how do you work with people? Where can they find you?
They can find me. Okay,
Because
where do I
because
start?
you
So
do worldwide, like
Instagram, I do.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's all I
Yeah.
was going to telehealth.
Are we Skyping these days still? Do
No,
people still Skype?
no, Zoom.
Zoom. So I work with out of town clients over Zoom. If you do live locally, it's so great to get together. So I do see local people in person in my office. Otherwise, we Zoom. And yeah, I have a clientele all over the place. And I work with my clients in a set of 12 sessions. And so that gives us 5 to 6 months together.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
And,
so,
I'm just going to say too, when women, a lot of them, my listeners, are going through perimenopause and menopause, which I think is one of the most profound shifts that a woman will have in her life. We start to become different people in this time, in a good, and it can be in a good way. It can also be if you don't take care of yourself, your body's going to start yelling at you with many different symptoms going, screw you, listen to me. You need to wake up. You need to start taking care of yourself. And this is the time that we need to start taking care of ourselves and healing old wounds, and just like putting us number one. We spend our whole adulthood from 20 to 40s taking care of other people. And that's in our nature. We start having kids, a lot of us. We get married, we get a job, and whatever it is that we're doing, we're not looking after. We put ourselves on the back burner, and we can get away with it for the most part for a while. But this time in our life, this transitional time, I think our bodies go, okay, it's your turn. It's time to take care of you. And so listen to that.
And I've sent so many of my clients to you, Karen, to the naturopath that I see as well, because I see where things are out physically, hormonally. And I recently too have really been investing in my my hormone health too. And wouldn't you know it, my thyroid is a little bit out.
Just a smidge.
Just a little.
We're working on it. Go do some breath work into it, Kyla.
I've been noticing lately, like going through my own process of things, that I have been holding my breath. And I have been getting stuck in my throat chakra. And so I've really been taking a lot of note and a lot of like conscious behavior to pay attention daily.
Applying your
This
emotional
is never
intelligence.
ending. This is never ending. Like this journey of personal development
It never ends. No.
it doesn't
That's why
end.
we're
Like,
here.
yeah. And if you feel like you're good at some point and you're like, okay, I'm feeling good now and you want to leave it, that's great. Good for you.
Yeah.
I just know that this will be my lifelong path
Yes.
of
Same.
continuing to get support and
I
being
believe
on
that's
this
why we're
journey.
here. We're here to love and to learn. And
Mhm.
so it's all about whatever lessons you need to learn in this lifetime and grow and heal. And that's why we're here, to become the best versions of ourselves. And that will be till the day we die.
And that will happen through acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah.
More acceptance. Can you, I'll leave it with this because we'll keep talking.
I know.
Can you accept yourself in all of your emotions?
I say no, not right now, but I'm working.
Can
I'll
you
answer.
love can you love and have compassion for yourself in all those emotions when you're in fear, anger, guilt, sadness, not just when you're happy? Can you still love yourself and be even more tender and even more caring in anything else unlike love? Mm-hmm. And if that's a hard question to answer, look at your children or look at your grandchildren and look at those little people in your life when they need nurturing, when they're upset or angry. How do you take care of them? Do you sit with them and hold them? Do you ask them if they want a blanket and a movie? Or do you try and feed them? Do you ask if they want to have a bath? You know, all of those nurturing practices, are you offering those to yourself?
Yes. I was on, just quickly here, I was interviewed yesterday on a podcast. The Sea Rock is his name. Anyways, he's got a fireside chat show. Anyways, he said, we were talking about, kind of what you're made of and why are you made of that, basically, and kind of where you come from. And he said, out of all the stuff that, happened in your childhood and the trauma and everything, anything that you still struggle with today? And I said, yeah. And it was funny because I didn't realize it till he asked me. And I said, self-love. That's the one thing that, because I hated myself for so long as a teenager and as a young adult, that it's still in there and it'll still rear its ugly head, that like not 100% fully accepting and loving of myself. And I think I've come in a long way, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you find yourself in those moments, are you able to give yourself a different perspective, a different perception? Yeah. Are you able to turn that around? And I think that's where the constant work comes in, and the empowering part is having that awareness and being able to give yourself a different perception.
Yeah.
Giving yourself the ability to have that recognition and do something different, because we haven't arrived. I mean, we've decided to be in these human physical bodies for a reason. So we can become more enlightened, but how enlightened can you be without leaving your human experience? Mm-hmm. Is something I'm curious about. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. For me, it does.
If there's any gift you can give yourself, it's to give yourself a different perception. And that's something I offer with my clients is that in their sessions is a different perspective.
The power of perception.
A shift in perception.
It's huge.
It is huge.
Huge. I've been telling myself that for days, because I've been highly stressed out, and I'm like, perception, Karen, why don't we just look at this as like, yeah, so I've got 1,000,001 things to do right now. Oh, well, let's be happy about it rather than having heart palpitations.
Totally. Oh my gosh. I could just start talking about like the healthy feminine and masculine. This is like, I feel like we could gear this into like a part 2 of this podcast, is looking at the divine feminine and how we operate in our masculine. And so that is my program that I'm launching again for the 3rd time. It's called Waking Her. And that is a 6-week immersive that will be starting
group coaching.
It's group coaching. for 6
Okay.
weeks. There'll be breath work in there as well. So every week for 6 weeks, you'll have a breath work session, and we'll be diving into emotional intelligence, manifestation, looking at how to take care of, the human medicine wheel, which is our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self. And we'll be looking at where you sacrifice. So we'll be
Wow.
really looking at the blocks and barriers that are there so you can acknowledge them and use them so that you can start to have more abundance, prosperity, deeper relationships, more intimacy, forgiveness for self, more liberation. So that's a 6-week
And when
series.
does that start?
I haven't picked the date yet.
Oh, how many times
Yet.
a year do you
It's gonna
typically do
be
it?
I've been doing one in like the end of spring, the past 2 years. This one's going to be this fall, so in a few weeks,
Okay.
and I'll have that launched on my Instagram profile, which is at Kyla.Erlandson, and then I'll probably run another one in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just for those that are listening to this maybe at a later
yeah,
date.
yeah.
Okay. So, and your website?
KylaErlandson.com.
Okay. And I'm going to
Under
link to all of
construction.
this.
Yes.
Okay.
The link is also in my tap bio,
Okay.
for the Waking Her. So anything that I have going on will be in that link.
Okay. Perfect. And then people can get a hold of you if they want to work with you one-on-one.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll put all of that, everybody, in the show notes. So be sure to check it out and stay tuned for part 2 between me and Kyla. Because as you can see, we could just keep talking.
And so, Karen, that's what makes me so stoked, is that Waking Her is all about looking at where we've been operating in the unhealthy feminine and bringing in the healthy feminine, which is the divine feminine.
Wow.
Really
Take the
looking,
course.
sign you up.
Okay, my friend, thank you so much for your time
Thank you.
today and your wise words. I appreciate you so much and love you so much.
Love you so much. Thank you. This was so fun.